6 years after the launch of the first game, Darkest Dungeon 2 is finally here, and man oh man have things changed. Hey there friends, it's Codiak here, one half the team behind Legacy Gaming, and today we're taking you through the basics with our ultimate starter guide for Red Hook Studios' Darkest Dungeon 2. There's no denying Darkest Dungeon 2 has undergone a serious transformation. The game may feel familiar, but there are a number of systems and intricacies that have certainly changed, and understanding them is essential if you plan on surviving the long journey to the mountain. I think it's important we start by understanding the new gameplay loop. Darkest Dungeon 2 leans heavy into the roguelite genre. That means we're starting from square one every time, but as we play, win or lose, we're progressing. The journey starts by selecting a party of 4. Unlike in Darkest Dungeon, where characters stick around from run to run, this team only sticks around for the duration of that particular run. You either make it to the end or die a horrible, tragic death, and when that happens, you start right back at the beginning with a new squad. I should also point out that you can't double up on your heroes, a big departure from Darkest Dungeon. Once you have your party of 4 established, you set off on your journey. This is where things get wildly different than the previous game. The goal is to reach the mountain. Why, you might ask? Well, truth be told, I have no idea since I'm still progressing in the game myself, but come hell or high water, that is our destination. You take control of a wagon, and by using that wagon, you'll navigate through multiple deadly biomes. You'll be forced to make decisions about what path you want to travel. Some will be easier than others, rewarding you with items or providing you with hope, the all-important torch system within the game. Other paths will be filled with deadly battles and lairs, gauntlet-style encounters that push your team to the limit. As you might expect, you'll have to take it all in stride and strike a balance between fighting for your life and exploring the other opportunities each biome presents. If you do manage to fight off the Guardian, the final encounter at the end of a biome, you'll get a chance to rest at an inn. This acts as our new hamlet, where you can use items to buff our heroes, reduce their stress, and improve the wagon. There's a number of new systems and features all baked into this location, but just hang tight, we'll unpack it all soon enough. As soon as you leave the safety of the crossroads, you'll be faced with a number of different paths, and as I alluded to before, you have to balance risk versus reward as you explore a number of key locations that will help you do just that. The Desperate Few is essential to restoring your hope. The more hope you have, the more benefits your heroes will have, like increased stats and chance for affinity changes. The lower your hope, the more advantages the enemies have. I'm talking increased stats, resistances, battle advantages, the whole 9 yards. Keeping your hope high is essential, plain and simple, and helping the Desperate Few is the best way to do that. The Watchtower is another essential building. Stop here and you'll reveal the landmarks on the paths ahead. This can be a game changer because you'll no longer be at the mercy of the unknown, and while you're traveling, you'll be able to make a more informed decision about what paths you want to travel down. The Shrine of Reflection is easily my favorite landmark in the game. A stop here will unlock a new ability for a specific hero, and it's up to you to determine who that is. Unlocking a new hero ability carries through from run to run, so if you unlock a new ability in your first run, that'll stick around in the second run and so on. The Shrine of Reflection is also a great way to learn more about the background of our heroes. It's a small bite of lore that fills in the story leading up to the collapse of the world, and a really neat snapshot of the heroes we've come to know and love over the past few years. You can also run across the Hoarder during your runs. This is a fully loaded vendor that sells you all sorts of good stuff from combat items and trinkets to wagon upgrades and inn items. The game features 3 different currencies, 2 of which you can spend at the Hoarder or the Provisioner at inns. These are called relics and baubles, and you'll gain those by fighting enemies and reaching other landmarks. One of those landmarks is the Academic Cache. This is always a great place to stop as it's completely safe and rewards you with a handful of items. Your profile level determines which items can be found during a run, so the higher you are, the more items that become available. The Academic Study is another popular destination, and just like curios from the original Darkest Dungeon, this is one landmark that comes at a price. Depending on your team and who you select, you'll experience different outcomes, some positive and some negative. A true case of risk versus reward, but if you're an adventurous spirit, unlocking the secrets of this landmark can transform your run. The run is definitely going to get off track at some point, and when that happens, you better hope a field hospital is nearby. Here you can heal up, cure diseases, and even expunge quirks, but of course, it'll all cost you. You can even purchase a few healing items here, which is great for offsetting some of the status effects you'll run across in each of the different biomes. The final landmarks are all combat related. There are a few different flavors here, but it really boils down to what the team is calling resistance encounters. This is where you'll experience that classic turn-based combat made famous in Darkest Dungeon, and where your run in Darkest Dungeon 2 can quickly derail. Each biome is home to a unique faction of enemies, and these resistance encounters will put you face to face with different groupings of those types of enemies. There's also a chance of running into cultists in any of the biomes, regardless of the other factions. It's just one way the game throws more at you, and it's the reason why knowing your path forward is so important. Because the world is quickly filling with chaos, if you ignore resistance encounters, a system called loathing builds up. The higher the loathing, the tougher the conditions are on the road, and with max loathing, your flame of hope will drain that much faster, and enemies will have opportunities to start encounters at an advantage. You can also run into road encounters, which are smaller, turn-restricted fights between major landmarks. These are often easier and limited to 5 rounds total, but if they catch you at the wrong time, they can prove deadly. Layers are another type of combat scenario in Darkest Dungeon 2. These are gauntlet-style encounters where you can choose to take on additional waves of enemies and eventually a boss for greater prizes. Of course, that also increases the risk, but hey, it's kind of the whole point. Finally, there are Guardians. These represent the final encounters of each biome before you reach an inn, and they're often the most challenging battle you'll face. All your hard work and preparation up until that point will be put to the ultimate test, but if you do manage to make it through, you'll be rewarded with the chance to recover at an inn. If you're skilled enough to reach an inn, you'll find it to be a wildly beneficial stop along the road to the mountain. This is Darkest Dungeon 2's take on the hamlet, and thus provides players the chance to build up their team for the next set of challenges. There are really 5 unique things players can do here, but they're all pretty important. First is relaxing. It sounds silly, but by utilizing the inn items you've picked up along the way, you can restore your hero's health, reduce their stress, and even use items to give them buffs for the entirety of the next region. It's easily the most crucial aspect of the inn, but because of the new relationship system, things can get a little complicated. More on that in a bit. You can also take advantage of the Mastery Trainer. For each Mastery token you've collected, you can upgrade one specific skill for one individual hero. Each ability has a base form and an upgraded form, and by using Mastery tokens, you can elevate a hero even further, increasing the damage of the abilities and even giving some of their skills new utility. Another activity at the inn is the Wainwright, who will upgrade your wagon with the items you've scavenged along the road. These improvements take many forms, such as providing you with scouting opportunities or allowing you to carry bigger stacks of food or relics. It may not seem important in the moment, but you'll feel the effects of those upgrades substantially throughout each biome. Finally is the Provisioner. Like the Hoarder, this is a vendor that sells you all sorts of items that you can use to improve your team's chance of survival. Once again, you'll use your relics and baubles to pay for these items. Once you're done resting and buffing your team, it's time to make a choice, where to journey to next. Since this video is releasing at the start of early access, the biome options are limited, but over the course of development, we know that there will be plenty of new places for our heroes to explore. As of right now, there are 4 main biomes in Darkest Dungeon 2. They are the Tangle, an overgrown jungle that blends nature with undead chaos. The Fodder, a diseased farmland that will put you face to face with the Plague Bringers, a gluttonous faction of disgusting monsters. The Sprawl, a crumbling city overrun with fanatics obsessed with fire. And the Sluice, an homage to the Warrens in the original game, filled to the brim with the Swine. Each faction leans into a different status effect, which allows you to properly prepare your team for combat. For example, enemies in the Sprawl will constantly try and burn members of your squad. You can offset this by using trinkets that increase your burn resistance. From start to finish, it's a puzzle and a mind twister, and it all culminates in the combat. I'm honestly impressed at how the Red Hook team has managed to elevate the combat without changing the things that made it so great in the first game. The biggest and most important change is a brand new token system. Tokens control everything outside of the pure damage a hero or enemy receives or does. Think of it as guaranteed buffs, debuffs, and status effects, and you'll be on the right track. Throughout combat, your moves and the moves of your enemy will have guaranteed effects, and while chance is still a factor in the game, it's much less obscure. For example, the dodge token grants the holder a 50% chance to avoid the next attack. In the same vein, the strength token gives the holder a 50% increase to damage on their next attack. Things are clearly defined, and that makes combat more of a chess game than anything else. The dev team even put together a nice token summary page right in the main menu so you can learn the ropes ahead of time. But honestly, I really enjoyed learning by doing, experiencing the relationships between moves and tokens in real time. Speaking of which, I think it's only fair we take a moment to touch on one of the newest features in Darkest Dungeon 2, relationships. Throughout your time on the road, your companions will learn to admire or loathe their companions. It's a complicated system, one that requires you to pay attention to your actions and evaluate how it's impacting your team. For example, if someone is getting a killing blow, it may be setting off someone else who would prefer to be getting those kills instead. It's not always going to set them off, but do it enough times and you'll start to see the cracks in the relationship. Things get dicey when one hero is at their wit's end and the relationship is tested. Much like afflictions and virtues in the original game, when things get bad, things get really bad, and negative effects can get in the way of your performance in combat or at the end. Envious players might step in to block another player's heal, while tumultuous heroes might trash talk you just a bit too much, causing another hero stress. It's a slippery slope, one that's almost impossible to come back from, but on the flip side of things, there are some good relationships and benefits that come from having heroes watch each other's back. To be clear, the game doesn't spell out how these individual relationships come about. You, as the leader of the party, have to pay attention to the changing dynamics and adapt accordingly. One thing that factors into relationships is stress. Much like the original game, heroes can become stressed due to a variety of combat and environmental factors. When a hero reaches 10 stress, they have a meltdown. This brings their health close to zero and strips away most of the relationships they have within their party. It's the single most impactful system within the game that influences relationships, and it's the reason why managing those relationships is so essential. All of this feeds back into the combat system, which still makes up the heart and soul of the game. By the time your run is over, your heroes will have a number of positive and negative quirks. They might also have a disease, and depending on the trinkets they have, they'll also have improved stats. Everything ties back into the action, and as you can see, the team has made some incredible improvements to the way the game looks, but also the way the combat flows. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll notice the encounter is now telegraphed. You know who's attacking, when, and in what order, and that's a really nice change for planning out combinations of offense and defense. You also have the ability to use new combat items, and while I touched upon this briefly, I think I should really emphasize them again because they're absolutely going to save you when your back's against a wall. Things like healing items provide you with a way to recover HP. Remember, you can't just continuously use healing items in DD2. It's not possible, and those abilities have usage caps. That's why combat items are so valuable. These items range in scope and effect from healing and cure status effects to damaging and impairing your enemies. They're vital to your success on the road, and the good news is they don't use up a turn, so you can use the item and then still get an action in with that same hero. Outside of combat, you have trinkets, the only equipable item in Darkest Dungeon 2. There's no armor, no weapons, just trinkets, and even though we're just starting early access, there are dozens of options that change the nature of your characters. These can be equipped at any time outside of the fighting. Each hero can have 2 slotted at any one time, and as you can see, you've got a really decent snapshot of their effects through the character screen. I love the improvements here, and while it takes a minute to get accustomed to the new layout, once you do wrap your head around it, you realize how much cleaner the information is displayed. Not sure what something is? Hover over it and you get a tooltip to guide you on your way. Still confused? Go into the tutorials. It's a great multi-layered approach to making sure players understand their characters, and while it does require some reading, it feels more akin to a Dungeons & Dragons type of experience. No matter how prepared you are, no matter how many items you've collected, you're gonna die, just like you did during the first game. Darkest Dungeon 2 isn't meant to be completed during the first run, and I'd argue it's almost impossible. Regardless of your progression, you'll still be rewarded with some experience to your profile. At the start of this video, I mentioned that DD2 is a roguelite, and this is where that system really comes to life. By reaching different levels, you'll unlock new items and quirks, which can be found and acquired in future runs. At set levels, you'll also unlock new heroes. This is massively important because not only is it giving you the flexibility to change out your team, but it's providing you with a failsafe in the event of a disaster. When you have multiple additional characters unlocked, they'll actually come in and fill out your party if you lose someone along the way. For example, if your party is made up of the Man-at-Arms, the Highwayman, the Grave Robber, and the Occultist, and one of them dies, but you have the Hellion unlocked, the next time you get to an inn, the Hellion will join your party. It's how Red Hook keeps pushing the ball forward. Even if it feels like you're coming up short, eventually the pieces will come together. There is so much to experience with this game, and honestly, I'm having a blast just figuring out the nuances, the things that have been tweaked or redefined in Darkest Dungeon 2. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of the game top to bottom. I tried to do my best to make things as comprehensive as possible, but if you still have questions about the game, feel free to drop us a comment. We're always checking back on our videos to see if there are any questions, and we'd be happy to help you out. The best way to learn about the game is, of course, playing it. Darkest Dungeon 2 is currently in early access on the Epic Game Store. Yes, it will eventually come to Steam after it exits early access in about a year, but for now, that's the way to play. You guys can also join us on Discord. We've got a great community of around 7,000 members with a special section dedicated just for Darkest Dungeon 2, so if you want to follow along with our adventures in the game, check out the link in the section below. Finally, if you guys like everything we're doing here at the channel and you want to support Legacy Gaming even more, you can now do so by becoming a member. For just a couple bucks, you're helping evolve the channel, take our community to that next level. Check out the join button below to learn more. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.